For millennia, human civilization has been defined by its great rivers.
But the rivers of Speyside contain water of a very different kind. It is these waters that has shaped not just the incredible taste, but also the destiny of a family that came to be known as the Mavericks of Tufton. So this is not just the story of whiskey, this is the story of the legends that introduced single malt to the world.
It all starts here in Scotland. It starts with the country, it starts with the water here, and it starts with how we make our whiskey. Obviously that's got to be right, and that's really what William Grant brought to the company when he built Glenfiddich Distillery, when he started it.
This is where the story began, in the Valley of the Deer, which in fact literally translates to Glenfiddich. Situated in Speyside, the heart of the Scottish Highlands, in a quaint little town called Tufton, back in 1886, a 47-year-old entrepreneur called William Grant began working on his dream to make the best dram in the valley. With the help of his 9 children and a single stone mason, William Grant built his own distillery brick by brick. It was a year later, on Christmas Day 1887, that the first drop of spirit fell from the copper stills, and it has never stopped since. The Grants knew that they had something special, and so in 1909, William's son-in-law, Charles Gordon, embarked on an epic world journey, and Glenfiddich was soon on the world map. With a fierce family-only policy and a single-minded intent to popularize single malt whiskey, the Maverick tradition was born. Today, the family's 5th generation is still at the helm of the Glenfiddich Distillery.
The family has always wanted to innovate and bring new ideas. We've been very privileged to be able to have this legacy of Glenfiddich and to be able to share that with so many consumers around the world, and to bring a lot of enjoyment, I hope, to whiskey drinkers, especially in India.
They say it's not really Scotch unless it's made in Scotland, and that's because of the water that flows through its rivers and lochs. It is these very waters and the incredible beauty that surrounds it that has inspired the creation of one of the most famous whiskies in the world, Glenfiddich.
Water, the elixir of life. Life began in the sea, and to the sea we shall all return. Water has the power to give life, to sustain life, and to take it. But in Scotland they take a slightly different view. In Scotland, water is life, albeit water of a slightly different hue. That explains why the Irish monks call distilled alcohol the water of life, or Whisky Baha. Over centuries, the mispronunciation of whiskey is what we now call whiskey.
The creation of Glenfiddich was an act that required incredible will and unconventional thinking. In short, it needed a group of mavericks to create an iconic brand from the ground up.
The Glenfiddich Distillery sits in the heart of the glen in the town of Tufton and has today become a landmark for the locals. Holding together 129 years of history, the Glenfiddich Distillery is a mark of William Grant's finest creation, with its roots still deep in tradition. This is where, in 1886, William Grant laid the first stones that built one of the oldest family-owned Scotch whisky distilleries. Time hasn't faded tradition, and yet you will find innovation in every drop of dram created here.
So those were the history book answers. How old, what year, how long, etc., etc. But what I'm here is to investigate the soul of Scottish whisky, and most importantly, what makes it so unique. To educate me on all this and much more, here's a gentleman named Ian Miller, who I'm told has all the answers. Hi Ian.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Consider me your student for the day.
Perfect.
Where do we begin?
We should begin right at the beginning. I think we should go and start at the Robbie Dew Spring where it all began for William Grant all these years ago.
Good
Step
idea.
this way.
Let's go.
So we're off to see the Robbie Dew Spring with a spring in our steps. It seems like it might be a while before I sip on my first dram.
So at the heart of all good whiskey is water. You said you were going to show us a spring, but I don't see one.
Yeah, if you came 128 years ago, there would absolutely have been an open spring. Back then, the laws weren't as tight as they are now. Now we must adhere to the new food laws, which means that you need to be looking after the quality of the water and anything that goes into the making of the whiskey. So now everything is absolutely encapsulated inside stainless steel pipes, so you don't actually see anything, but take it from me, It is all high quality Robbie Dew spring water.
And what makes this Robbie Dew spring water so special?
So when William Grant was designing and building and thinking about his distillery, to create the best dram in the valley, he wanted access to the best water. This had the best reputation in the valley by far.
Right.
And so he decided that he would, first off, try to get hold of the water and then lease the land below it so he could build his distillery and connect the water to his dream.
And what is this structure here?
This is a cairn, and all of the Robbie Dew spring water actually feeds through the cairn. So we need to draw samples on a daily basis to actually check out the quality of the water.
Okay.
But it needs to be locked as well so that no one can actually interfere or put anything into the water as well. So it's simply a cairn that allows us to draw samples from.
So the water was inspiration, and where did he get the expertise to build his?
The expertise, he spent many years working at a local distillery in the village of Dufftown called Mortlach.
At the time, the village of Dufftown was actually called Mortlach. The first church, the first school, as well as the first distillery went by that name. And it was in this very distillery where William Grant spent a good 20 years, initially as an administrator, and then as a production manager, and then eventually a manager. But all along, he had very different plans.
This was a man who wanted more than just to manage a business. He wanted to own his own business. So he started to get the idea, having worked here already for a couple of years, to actually get into distilling. It was not far from here in a building called the HADDOCK house where they lived, the place where he accrued both knowledge and sufficient finance to build his dream.
It was right here in Haddock that he was reading the local newspaper one day, and he noticed that a distillery was holding a sale for all their equipment second-hand. The list had everything he was looking for, and the price was something he already had saved up.
All he had to do beyond that point was lease the land and build the distillery.
It's such an iconic global brand, but it all started in this tiny village.
Yeah, William Grant, although it's a global brand now, I think it came from very small beginnings, and he wasn't a big traveller per se. In fact, he felt it necessary to actually stay at the core of the business, and he would get his sons to do the travelling. There's nothing in the records of William Grant having travelled anywhere outside the village. One pair of boots and no car.
Excellent.
It was in fact only after the marriage of William Grant's daughter Isabella with a boy from the Gordon family, Charles Gordon, that the first single malt whiskey left the shores of Scotland and was taken all over the world. For that story, we will have to travel to Cabrac, the home of the Gordons.
Well, we're here in the Cabrac, which is the home of the Gordons. My great-grandfather married William Grant's daughter in 1900, and then he joined the family business in 1903. My great-grandfather travelled the world. He visited India, he visited Australia, right around the world selling Glenfiddich. And Each generation has brought something new to the business as a family business, bringing to the world Glenfiddich single malt, which up until the 1960s really wasn't well known.
Carbrick is very important in relation to the history of whisky, because in this wild area we had more than 400 illicit small distilleries, all producing illegal whisky, and that helped in the growth of the sales of malt whisky, because illicit whisky seemed to have a greater value than whisky that was made legally. I guess it was a talking point.
Yeah.
Eventually the government managed to get control of all of the illicit distilleries, and illicit distilling died over, it took probably about 50 to 70 years, and the Gordons had their own illicit distillery going in the house as well. So the Gordons like to tell people that they've been distilling whisky or spirits for the last 500 years.
Wow. So where do we go to next? Any chance of tasting some?
I think we should probably go down to a legal distillery. It's not too far from here. It's called Glenfiddich. You may have heard of it.
I'm familiar
and
with it.
I think we should probably try a few drams in there. So we'll head off down to the distillery and we'll get a few drams.
Let's do it.
Let's head off.
Coming up next, I meet Glenfiddich's very own Maverick master distiller Brian Kinsman, who will take me through a quick tour of the Glenfiddich distillery.
Good morning, Mr. Kinsman. This is Breakfast of Champions.
Absolutely.
Bright and early here in Tufton.